What's up, everybody, and welcome to Growing Up Gaming, your weekly podcast where we meet a new person of the internet to discuss their childhood with gaming and how it inspired their lives today. My name is Mitch Power. Again, thank you guys each and every week for returning to the show. Hopefully you have subscribed to the show on iTunes or Google Play. We are also now on Stitcher and TuneIn Radio, so if you want to subscribe on any of those outfits instead, go right ahead. This week's show, we have our friend, his name is Chris Bell. I met this man on the Comedy Button Podcast Facebook group, and he joins us to share his stories. If you guys want to be on an episode of the show, feel free to send me a tweet at the podcast Twitter page, which is at GUG Podcast. Without further ado, let's get started with Christopher Bell. Do you remember how old you were when you started gaming?
Well, I don't, it didn't really become a full-time, passion or pastime until I was 6 years old. But I mean, I do remember the first game I ever played was I think it was 4. It might have been Pac-Man or some shitty Texas Instruments Pac-Man clone. Didn't really think much of it at the time. And it wasn't until I went over to a friend's house and started playing Mario, Legend of Zelda, Kung Fu, basically all early Nintendo first-party games.
So you didn't have your own system, at the time. You were basically kind of heading over to friends' house where they had NES, stuff like that, playing with their stuff?
Yeah, well, actually, the funny thing is I don't think, I can't remember the exact year I got mine. I'm going to say 89, but 88, my grandparents got a Nintendo before we did. And here's the cruel part. Because we live pretty close to the Canadian-US border, we would cross over to the States, and we ended up bringing back an NES from the mall there. And I was super stoked that we got it, but we ended up giving it to my grandparents that day. I'm like, motherfuckers.
Why did they end up getting it?
Because they wanted one.
They wanted one? Is there any particular games you can remember they were jazzed about? Were they all about Tetris, or were they actually into other stuff?
They liked Tetris and they liked Super Mario, but I think the one game that they really got into was Solomon's Key. Which, yeah, I couldn't figure it out either. But though I do recall, I remember after I had gotten mine, I was really into Mega Man. And my grandma borrowed it from me because I guess she wanted to have something in common to talk with me about. But she ended up staying up till 3 a.m. one night trying to beat Airman's level.
Dude, that's awesome. That's really cool that your grandma had an interest in at least, wondering what you were playing as well. So she at least wanted to borrow to do that. My grandma just basically was like, I got Tetris and Dr. Mario. I don't need to play what you're playing, kid. I got my own stuff. So then you ended up... it's so funny. So, would you go over their house a lot because they had it? Were you kind of at first when you were super happy that they got one, were you just oh man, let's go to grandma's house all the time?
Oh shit, that's all we did when we went there. We'd go there, I'd fuck around on the Nintendo for about, I don't know, basically between showing up there and having dinner and then having to go home.
Right.
I mean, we didn't live particularly far from my grandparents. I think it was maybe a 5-10 minute drive.
Yeah, same here. When I was younger, I lived a 5-minute drive from my grandma's house. So I wonder if she ended up getting it. Obviously, your grandparents got it so that way they could play and stuff. But also, I wonder if they were this will be real easy to have the kids over and just give them another incentive to come over. My grandma had a pool, so that was probably her big thing. When she bought her house, she was probably I'll get a pool, and I bet my grandkids will be over here all the time. And good job, Grandma. We definitely were. We were over there a lot.
Well, I didn't really think about it too much at the time, but now I realize that I guess my grandparents were also slightly overprotective. When I was a bit older, I remember this game called Hero Quest came out. It was a board game. It was a dumbed down Dungeons and Dragons game, and I wanted it one year for Christmas, and they didn't want to get it for me because of all the hoopla surrounding the stigma surrounding Dungeons and Dragons, Satanism. There was actually, and there actually in the Vancouver area there was a murder, and they used this guy killed his mom and grandma for an inheritance, and they used the Dungeons and Dragons defense.
Oh yeah, of course, right? That good old D&D defense.
Oh, it's like, it was a cop-out.
As most of the stuff is usually when it comes to, people, any violent crime that happens looking for any reason, and then they go in their room and see, a Doom poster on the wall and go, oh no, he must have played that Doom, and because of shooting all those demons and listening to that awful metal music, he just had to go do that. So, were they ever protective on you with games and stuff too? Were they, really like, oh no, you can't play those games. Those games are awful.
No, not that I can really think of, but and my interest didn't really steer towards that way. I mean, obviously there was no ESRB. Right. There was also like no Grand Theft Auto, so true. I guess I had zero context.
Right. I mean, unless you looked at the box art and there was some like weirdness on the box art, because that was back in the day before there was YouTube videos that mom could look up to go, yeah, you're not playing that. Before it was just, then again, the box art was always misleading as well, because you'd see some box art that's like awesome, and then you go play the game and it's nowhere close to looking like that, or even the same context of it. You're like, what does this box art have anything to do with this game? But that was back before internet was around, so we kind of had to go look at the front and the back of the box art and go, yeah, this is a good game, right? Hopefully.
Yeah, that's all you had to go off of.
Yeah, there was no other options, like gaming magazines, EGM, obviously of GamePro, that type of stuff eventually came around, but that was before all that, when and also too, the box art was back when they came with instruction manuals to tell you the story, because the games weren't even big enough to show you like the story of the game. You had to like read the instruction manual, and it's like, this is the story of the game and this is actually how you play it, before tutorials and the internet and all that fun stuff.
Well, that's the thing. I miss instruction manuals. Like, I mean, there's an argument to say that like games are better than ever now, but all I want is a fucking instruction manual.
If you buy some Rockstar games, you'll still get them. They're like I think the only company that still go full on like really nice instruction manuals. They include like a map of whatever the game is, whether it's Red Dead or Grand Theft Auto. Like, they're actually probably one of the only companies there. I actually just recently got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for Switch, and when you open it up, the inside of the actual sleeve for the game case is basically your instruction manual. It's like, go, turn, drift, shoot. That's it. And that's all you need. It's really funny. Like, as soon as you open it up, like, there's no instruction manual. It's just like, here's the 5 buttons, figure out the rest. And I'm just like, well, it's Mario Kart for the most part. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Mario Kart growing up, but like I remember playing the most. Like, my old roommate and I ended up splitting a Wii U, and we bought one. And like, there's something about the game that the new Mario Kart games I just don't like. It's like, I feel like it's the rubber band effect. Like, if you're doing shitty, the game will help you any way it can. So are you lightning rods, blue turtle shells?
Yeah, I think blue turtle shell kind of ruined. First place. I mean, the only thing is now is that depending how good you are, blue shells won't even matter depending how good you are, because now like the game's getting to the point where you could have such a sizable lead over people that even with a blue shell, you still don't even get wrecked or whatever. Like, you still get, obviously you're going to get hit, but like, it's gotten to the point now where it's not as big of a deal, because I've seen people so far ahead that blue shells and all that don't even matter because they recover and they're still first place. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm just either they're really, really good or I just suck at the game. Probably a little bit of both, but that's all right.
I'd probably suck at the game.
So, right. So then you went from NES, all of that. Do you remember the next system? Did you end up getting your own NES, or did you like kind of just wait until the next console generation came around?
No, they ended up getting us an NES a couple months later. It seemed like a really long 6 months though, but it was that Christmas they got us my grandparents got us an NES. Very cool. Yeah, and having your own then. Well, I wonder if they were like happy to get you your own, but then also bummed at the same time because you didn't have to go over there as much, or if they were just like, oh, well, I guess that was cool. No. Telling me to go to my grandparents' house was not a hard sell. I mean, I loved going there. My grandparents were awesome. That's great. Yeah, I remember going to my grandma's house constantly. I loved it over my grandma's house. It was awesome. So, what do you remember as far as the next step up, as far as like, did you go just continue the Nintendo trend, or did you become a dumb Sega kid like me? No, I stayed Nintendo. I mean, we got a Super Nintendo when that came out, and I was always like, there was always a part of me that I wish I got a Sega Genesis, but you know, in hindsight, I'm kind of glad I didn't.
No, you made the right choice. Don't worry about it.
I don't. The choice might have been made for me, but
No. Yeah, whoever made that choice for you, they were steering in the right direction. Like I was a Sega kid. All my neighborhood kids were Sega kids, or all my neighborhood friends. And then there was always the one kid who had the Super Nintendo. So I mean, at least I got a taste of what Super Nintendo had. But you know, obviously, if you look back, think of like your top 5 memorable games from that era, and not too many of them are Sonic games. You know what I mean, or any Genesis games. So no, you're good. Question I have to ask: which one's better, Mario 3 or Mario World?
oh man, I don't know. It's like you're making me choose between. Oh man, this is a hard choice. There are parts of Mario World that I liked more.
Right.
I guess what I did like about Mario World is that you could save your game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I played way too many games that did. There's a lot of games that we played that you had to end in one session. The most notable being like Blaster Master.
Right. Yeah. Or before the game had the save data.
Or even passwords.
Yeah. Or you had passwords, or you know there was the. It wasn't really a cheat, but like there was the mode, like of course like Mario 1 Warp Zone, where you know quickly you can get somewhere where you can get to World 8, or if you want to, you know, but still you had to play through the game. It's not like there was that save progress, but. Yeah, kids, back in the day, we didn't have any autosave or cloud storage. We had passwords.
Or saving, period.
Or saving, or hope you leave your NES on all night and hope it doesn't overheat, because you got to leave that on.
Oh, shit, my dad did that with Blaster Master. Like, one day, he's like, he'd start playing it, he'd get to a point, and then it'd like, be like 7 hours later, he's like, fuck, I'm only halfway through this game.
Right.
And then we just keep doing it over and over again. And he's like, fuck this, I'm leaving this on.
Yeah, like there's a point in time when the games, you know, depending on the game you're playing, just, you know, you can't, there was no password, there was nothing. It's just like, and of course, if you're doing awesome in the game, you're just like, well, I guess I'm just going to leave this on. So I had one friend, I remember their stuff overheating, just like, I don't know how, but I mean, it's not like they ran super hot or anything, but like, you know, I remember one friend's NES just like straight breaking because he left it on all night playing games. Like he was playing games and then he just pause it and go to bed and then wake up. Like I don't think he ever turned it off, but I remember like, you know, they didn't fail that often, but eventually they did. So
I never really had that problem with them. I mean, let's see, I still have all my old systems.
Yeah, let's. I wonder how many people are going to be able to say in 15 years they have their Xbox One that still works fine, right? Or their PS4 that still works fine, because like, God forbid they don't last as long at all. So, do you remember any like what games you ended up getting for your Super Nintendo that you were super jazzed about?
Yeah, Mega Man X.
There you go.
Final Fantasy 3. Chrono Trigger.
All the see right there, you just named 3 really good games that weren't even around on Genesis. So congratulations, you made the right choice.
That's Street Fighter 2. I mean, I still love Street Fighter. I still actually play it right now. I was like ran around with Street Fighter 4. I decided to actually take some time and try to get good at it.
Oh right,
like, good at fighting games. Yeah, it's an uphill climb.
Yeah, it's so funny because like I'm not going to say fighting games weren't as complex back then, but just now they're so next level. Like there's so many things, and it's just a matter of, you know, that's one community that I respect, but I can't do it. Like I tried, you know, I would try with I obviously in that time in like early 90s, everybody was into Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, just because that was the most popular stuff then. So, you know, of course, everybody played those. But, you know, I tried getting into Killer Instinct, which for the most part, the new Killer Instinct on Xbox One, awesome tutorial. But then you go online and still get your teeth kicked in and you realize you still suck no matter what. But, I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm good, but I think I'm better than average.
Right. That's definitely better than what I can say. I can't say that.
I ended up even going the route of actually buying the fight stick too.
Yeah, my brother-in-law does that. He has a fight. Like anytime he gets a system, that's his first thing he looks at. He's like, "What fight sticks are available?" And I'm just like, I can't even do that. I never played as much in the arcades, which some people that's all they played. Like they played Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Marvel vs. Capcom, all those in the arcades, and I never quite got into them in the arcades. The only thing I will say though that Genesis had over better, Mortal Kombat had blood. No censorship for Nintendo, so that was the only advantage to being a Genesis kid playing Mortal Kombat is,
no option to trade blood for sweat.
Yeah, exactly. No sweat, quote unquote. It's like, really, sweat? All right, I guess that's what we're beating. No,
that's what it gave Nintendo the reputation of being a kids company, is because of that censorship move.
Yeah, pretty much. And that was just another, dude, everybody talks about console wars now, PS4, Xbox One. I remember Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, man, they literally had commercials talking shit against each other. They literally...
Genesis does what Nintendo don't.
Yeah, exactly. That was a slogan in advertisements, fuck Sega. Yeah. Look what we could do. And it was fuck Nintendo, look what we can do. They were straight at each other's throats. And it was not even... it wasn't PC or friendly. They were literally just talking about, no, they suck. Look what we can do. It's really crazy.
I think it was more like Sega shitting on Nintendo than the other way around.
That's right.
Because I know Sega. I'm not quite sure what the reasoning behind that. It might have been some sort of policy Nintendo had, but whatevs. But Sega was always ready to make the direct comparison, and Nintendo usually didn't mention their competition. But yeah. I remember the 90 console wars.
Well, also, too, again, though, it's Nintendo being... I mean, in a way, they're still that kind of way today where they don't bother with competition. They're not trying to match up to everybody else. They're just we're doing our own thing. This is what we're doing. If you want to come on board, cool. If not, whatever. That's kind of how Nintendo's always been, and that's how they still are. Because, obviously, when certain games were coming out and they don't get them, they're just whatever. We have Mario, we have Zelda, we have these, and of course people will still buy those year after year regardless, so they didn't care. I mean, look what you just said though. You mentioned Chrono Trigger and all those. They could, if Nintendo really wants to throw it in Sega's face now, even though it'd be kind of mean, they could just be let's go look at a top 100 games and see how many of those are Genesis games, if they really wanted to. But, of course Nintendo doesn't have to do that. They're still... I'm not going to say they're still one of the top companies out there. Obviously, console sales wise, it's a little different, but still, Mario, when you think of gaming, if you ask the average person about gaming, they'll say Mario. A lot of people will think Mario first before everything else, just because of that lineage and that history and that, nostalgia of the Mario games back then. So, did you end up did you kind of just continue down the Nintendo route where you just went Super and then did you go 64 route?
No, I didn't actually. I mean, I do have a 64 now, or I got one way after that generation ended. But my decision to go
like everybody else did, basically.
Well, so I'll tell you why. I went to PlayStation because of Final Fantasy VII.
Yep, that brought a lot of people over.
I was the type of guy that would always buy I guess at the time I was just I don't care what game I play ever or any games I play, but except I need to play every Final Fantasy.
Right.
So
and
actually,
yeah, go ahead.
So I was just gonna say Final Fantasy, man, I remember playing the first Final Fantasy, and I ended up only playing it because around the same time I actually got my NES, I got a subscription to Nintendo Power.
Yes.
And the first issue I got was it was a strategy guide for the first Final Fantasy. My dad told me, he's I got your subscription to Nintendo Power. Oh, awesome, great. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I knew it was just going to be a whole bunch of cool Nintendo shit, but I got the strategy guide, and I'm oh well, I'll pick up the game, and I kind of just forced myself to like it.
Yeah, I mean. It's weird because RPGs are kind of like that. Some, people talk about how awesome they are, but then some people play them and just don't even want to understand them, or they're too complex, or they don't even want to bother.
Or the fact that, you've been playing Mario for all your life, and then someone tries to throw in menu-based combat to you.
Right. What's turn-based?
Yeah, basically, like like it's pretty. I guess a pretty jarring transition for like a 6 or 7 year old.
Right, because it slows
But
down everything. Like, you don't want to slow down everything. You want things to go faster. You want to, beat up a bunch of enemies, not stand there and think about what you need to do.
walk in circles and fucking power level.
Right, exactly. Like, I need to get to a level. What? By the way, what's a level? I mean, Mario didn't have levels. You had 2 levels, Big Mario or Little Mario. That's about, like, your levels that you had as far as damage and stuff. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. Yeah, but it wasn't until, like, Final Fantasy II on Super Nintendo and especially Final Fantasy III that really kind of solidified my love of RPGs. But that's why I ended up going the PlayStation route.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, too, is that it was weird because, there wasn't any Final Fantasy games on Genesis or anything. Like, it was weird because Nintendo stuck with them for so long, and then, or, I would say Square stuck with Nintendo for so long, only releasing their stuff there. Then finally PlayStation came around and CD-ROM came around, and they were like, nope, that's what we're doing. And they just completely just bounced. And, I can imagine... That's why a lot of people, I'm not going to say that's why a lot of people switched to PlayStation, because obviously there was numerous things going on where a lot of people skipped over to PlayStation. But yeah, the RPGs, like, it's hard to argue that going Super Nintendo then straight to PlayStation 1, those aren't some of the best RPGs ever made, like, on those consoles.
Oh, it was like a golden age for RPGs. Like, there was so many great RPGs on Super Nintendo and early PlayStation 1.
Yeah, especially like if you went from, like, I'm not going to say there weren't any on Genesis, but I mean, if you were an RPG fan, it would have been a hard switch to go the 64 route instead of the PlayStation route. Like, there was no, I'm not going to say there weren't any RPGs on 64, but I mean, just the caliber of RPGs, how big they were, how ridiculous they were, how many there were, just game wise, it was hard not to go the PlayStation route if you were a big RPG fan.
I can only think of one RPG on 64, and I think that was Quest 64.
Right. They had that.
And it wasn't good.
Well, yeah, that was the first, like, that was the one, I if I'm remembering right, I think that was the first launch RPG, or not launch, that was like the first big RPG on the system, and yeah, it kind of let some people down. But then it's weird because RPG is such a weird type of, like, I'm not gonna say it's a weird genre, but some people classify certain things as RPGs that other people wouldn't. Like, some people go down the rabbit hole of, like, well, Zelda's an RPG. Like, well, you
can make an argument.
Yeah, you can make an argument, but then again, like, the way games are today, there's role playing in Madden and NHL, like, where you create a person and you control his stats. I'm like, yeah, if you want to say, like, a lot of games now have RPG elements, but true RPG games, Final Fantasy VII, Chrono Cross, Chrono Trigger, like, all those types of games, yeah, like, you basically had to go the PlayStation route, and then that kind of cemented everybody into Sony once, if that was their genre of choice, that was definitely the route that they pretty much went going forward, because Nintendo did come back and get some Final Fantasy stuff with GameCube and whatnot, but still, they had Crystal Chronicles, I think, which I think was the only Final Fantasy game on GameCube. The only thing Nintendo at least still had was Game Boy, like, Game Boy Advance, a DS and stuff. That's at least where they kept with the RPG stuff going.
Oh yeah, like I bought a DS like a couple years after it came out, and I was when they did the first remodel. I'm like, the amount of great RPGs that came out on that system is like unheard of. Like, the one that I'm really thinking was actually probably one of the last games that came out on that system, and it was an Atlas game called Radiant Historia. Mm-hmm. And what I liked about it was it kind of reminded me of Chrono Trigger, because there was a lot of time traveling or alternate timelines in that one.
Right.
Yeah, if you ever look into it, that game is criminally underrated. Yeah,
and that's like the other thing too for me, because like DS had such good, like, the RPG, like, well, again, it was kind of like bringing back the era of the Super Nintendo days where graphics weren't mind-blowing, but they had that, like, 16, 32-bit-esque style graphics. Like, there were still, like, I still loved all the Castlevania games that were on DS, because that was basically like your Symphony of the Night style games. Like, those games were, Dawn of Sorrow, and those Castlevania games are still so good, and because they were all still the hand-drawn sprites, and that was kind of the last system to fully embrace that before everything went 3D, which is kind of sad because, now it's now it's nostalgic to have a game like Shovel Knight where now they're going back to the 8-bit or 16-bit era, and so many people love that. And, now they have Bloodstained coming back, which, basically is Castlevania without Konami's, permission. It's essentially Castlevania, but yeah, I mean,
well, Ego's behind it, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, so I mean, and then they're doing the whole hand drawn stuff, and I mean, it's super cool. But obviously, there's still a need for those types of games. The only thing I'll say though is that graphics wise, everything on Super holds up better than PlayStation, because like when they went the 3D route, man, those jaggies and those polygons and those blocks, and man, dude, some of those like the gameplay is still king, but like when you look back at those games, you remember them looking so much better than they actually were.
Oh yeah, I have a much harder time going back to old PlayStation games than I do going back to Super Nintendo games. Like I remember I've tried replaying Final Fantasy VII. I had my original disc and I popped it in. I'm like, oh fuck, digital controls. Oh fuck.
Yep. Yeah, it's rough. It's rougher to go back to that just because of like when you think 3D, and it's crazy because again back then Final Fantasy VII, especially like the cutscene, you were losing your mind. You were like, "This is the greatest games will look. This is amazing." And then then you look back now and you're like, "Wow, look at that."
Wow, I was a stupid kid.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is it's worse is like nostalgia makes your brain think games looked way better than they did. Like you think in your head like, man, this game looked like this, and then you go back and actually play it, and you're like, yeah, it's not even close to that. Like it doesn't look like that at all. It's real rough.
I could think of an exact example when I said something like that. It was like when they did the Ocarina of Time re-release on 3DS.
Right.
That game looks like how I remember it. If you know what I'm saying.
The re-release does, like how...
Yeah.
Yeah. And then go back and play the, like there's that. And then I did the same thing with Resident Evil where I bought the remaster in HD on Xbox One and I played it and I'm like, man, this game was good. And then I thought that's how the Resident Evil 1 on PlayStation looked. No. Oh, yeah. And then I go back and look at like old gameplay from the PlayStation version and I'm like, wow, this is completely different. Like this looks awful compared to what I thought in my head it looked like. I just thought, yeah, this was the PlayStation 1 version, right? No, I was playing the GameCube remaster in HD, not the PS1 version that was HD. I was like, this is, again, your brain plays those weird tricks on you.
Yeah, it's called getting old.
Yeah, it's just all that oldness, we're just so old and everything. How old are you, by the way?
34.
There you go. At least I got somebody in the podcast that's like around the same age as me. I'm going to be 31. So then did you pretty much just, being a big RPG fan, did you kind of just continue down the road, PlayStation 2 and just that road?
Yeah, I pretty much stayed with PlayStation. I don't think I bought any other console on top of that. I'm at that, I was at those ages where like I can afford like multi-platforming, I guess, but
right. When you didn't have to rely on grandma and everybody to get you the consoles, when you actually had money to buy your own stuff.
Yeah, when my income wasn't birthday money or Christmas presents.
Your very limited birthday money and your birthday money or chore money that was definitely not enough to go buy consoles. So yeah, that's always nice when you get old enough to be able to just buy your own stuff.
That reminds me, a friend of mine actually applied for a credit card saying his source of income was birthdays and Christmases.
Oh my god!
And they gave him a credit card.
Well, of course they can, because they'll be like, sure, here's 45% interest. Have fun with this. Like, they don't care. What are you talking about? They're like, how do you get money? Oh, I sit on a corner and I have a tin can there and people drop off money. Fair enough. Here's $1,000 credit. Like, they don't care.
Yeah, I guess so.
So then, like you went down PlayStation. So it's funny because with RPGs, like the only thing I will say is, there was obviously there was good RPGs on like, 64 was kind of the dull point as far as Nintendo goes. But then when it got to like GameCube, there were some decent RPGs. But like, it was funny because Xbox actually had good RPGs too. But now it seems like they don't even go down that route anymore.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, they had the Elder Scrolls before any other system had it. But around that time, I didn't get into it. It wasn't until I actually didn't get into that series until after I played Fallout 3.
Which I would say most people, and the funny thing too is go play Fallout 2. It's not like that at all. Like they you know what I mean? They changed that series entirely too. But yeah, like Xbox was kind of ahead of the curve in that general, well, not ahead of the curve, but they had the games that eventually would end up being awesome. Like, you know, they had Knights of the Old Republic, they had, you know, the Elder Scrolls games, they had Morrowind before everybody else. I remember they had Doom when PS2 didn't have Doom, which isn't an RPG, but it was kind of weird because they had like you know, they had Half-Life 2, which again, Half-Life 2 on a console back then was like unheard of, but then somehow they figured it out. But yeah, it's sad now because now it just seems like Xbox doesn't go down the route, but also too, Xbox in Japan is non-existent. So, I mean, obviously I understand why games aren't coming out on it, but yeah, I mean, those RPGs, like some people, Knights of the Old Republic is like their favorite RPG from that time, like that whole like, you know, GameCube, PS2, Xbox era, like their favorite RPG of that time was Knights of the Old Republic or, you know, Morrowind or whatever. So some people like that, but yeah, it's kind of sad because now it's, you know, at least in your case, if you continue down the PlayStation route, RPGs aren't going to be a problem.
No, it's not.
Like,
I mean, I actually, yeah.
So then you went PS2. Do you remember any specific RPGs from like the PS2 era that you remember?
Oh shit, I got like.
You're just going to look at your shelf right now and go, let me just see this, and this.
I had a lot of the level 5 games like Dragon Quest VIII, Rogue Galaxy.
Man, Rogue Galaxy was awesome. I remember working at the store, and that was such a big deal. Like, there was advertisements everywhere. And that and Dragon Quest VII, I think, had the demo for Final Fantasy 12 in there. I think, was it 12? I think it was. It was
Dragon Quest VIII.
Dragon Quest VIII.
Yes, it did have the demo for 12.
Right, and I remember people, like, buying the game. That was back when, you know, people would buy a game for a demo, and they'd be like, all right, that demo was cool. But, I mean, they would hopefully stick around for the other game.
No, that shit still happens. I bought Final Fantasy Type 0 for the Final Fantasy 15 demo.
You are right. That definitely still happens. I forgot about that. That is still happening.
As much as I kept trying to tell myself that wasn't the case, I'm like, no, I'm gonna play this game. I swear.
No.
I probably invested about 2 weeks worth of play time into it. That's about it. And then I was like, I want to like it. It's just not for me. Oh no, it was right around the time I got roped into Destiny.
Oh geez, there you go.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, it's like it seems like it's RPGs or shooting or first-person shooters. But I don't play a lot of first-person shooters. But
well, also too, like you said, like you obviously you like the RPG, like Fallout 3. That was kind of like the mix of both, where you know it wasn't a full-fledged RPG, it wasn't a full-fledged shooter, but it was kind of a mix of both. Like I would definitely say Fallout's more RPG than it is shooter because.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Like the shooting aspects of that game, they're all right. Like, there's obviously games out there that are better shooting, but that's more focus of, like, an RPG and everything. So, it's funny, too, because, you know, you're either, like, a Fallout person or, like, a Skyrim, like, Elder Scrolls type. Like, I can't get into the Elder Scrolls stuff for some reason. I don't know if it's just the fantasy stuff, but, like, I prefer Fallout way better than any of the Elder Scrolls games. But then you get people that are the exact opposite.
I like them both the same, but I didn't really get into Fallout 4 definitely not nearly as hard as Fallout 3 or Skyrim. I'm embarrassed to say that I platinumed Skyrim.
Well, there's no embarrassment with that. You only had to do, 300 hours of it? That's all. Or some ridiculous number or something. Like some ridiculous high number.
No, I'm not really embarrassed. I mean, it is kind of a nerd achievement I'm proud of. So.
Everybody has those nerd achievements. It's okay. I mostly play on Xbox myself, so it's not the platinum. But I do have the Bladder of Steel achievement in Rock Band 2. Where you have to play all of the songs in a row without failing or pausing. So,
oh wow,
it's called the Endless Set List. Where I think on disc for Rock Band 2 there were 72 songs, something like that, and I did them all on Expert Guitar because there was an achievement for beating the Endless Set List on Expert. So I literally sat there, I think it was like 6 or 7 hours straight, and played the entire thing, and I ended up doing it, which got me real scared because those last 5 songs are the hardest songs, and I'm playing them on Expert Guitar, and I've been playing for 6 hours straight, and I was like, if I screw this up, I will just probably never play this game again. But I ended up doing it. So everybody has those like moments where you just super nerd out, and there's no shame in that. It says if that's what you had to do, if that's what you did to have fun, who cares, man?
Did you have to clench or use a clothespin or something?
No, I'm actually pretty good. I don't like, for some reason, I don't have to, I can hold my bathroom moments and I'm good. Like I work on the phones where I can't just get up and go to the bathroom whenever I want. So I've gotten pretty good about, being pretty good about drinking water and just hanging out. And, especially if I'm preoccupied with other stuff, dude, I don't even think about it. I'm just like, nah, I'm good. But it is funny because that is the name of it, but it wasn't a problem for me. So yeah, I was just going to be more pissed off if I did the last 5 songs when you start getting into like Iron Maiden and like all these ridiculous guitar songs, and then I fail and it'd be over with. Yeah. I'd just take the disc and throw it out my damn window and just never play it again. I'd be like, nope, I'm done.
That would be when you like pull a Who and actually break your freaking plastic guitar.
Yeah, I would just go nuts. Just, smash it into the ground as hard as I could. Just pull a full-on Francis and just, like, break my Xbox and all of that stuff. Like, thankfully, that was it. But there are those moments where, everybody has that moment, whether it's now or before, where, you'd stay up all night playing this one game because you loved it so much, or you did all this to get this one. Thankfully, now we have achievements, to actually, like, kind of show proof that we did it. Like you always had that guy that's like, yeah, bro, I beat Goro with only one hand in Mortal Kombat. Like, you're a liar. No, you didn't. And then they'd be like, nah, man, I did. I swear to God. You can ask my brother. He saw me. Like, now there's at least proof. It's like, no, really, I did do this. Like, look.
That's true.
Yeah.
And now it's even easier to record everything, too.
Yeah, exactly. Now we've gotten to the point where you could literally record the moment it happens. So now you can't even say like, oh, you hacked it, bro. You didn't do it right. No, look, I recorded my entire thing on Twitch. Go watch my stream of all of it, which, dude, there's no way I could. If I was on Twitch doing what I did, I'd be way more nervous just because if there was 2 people looking at me while I was doing it, I would have freaked out. I would have been like, no, I can't do this. Like, I did it. Like, I literally, like, my kids were in school. My wife left for work. I was home all by myself. I had all the time to do it. I literally counted it out. I'm like, I looked it up online. Like, how long would it take me to do it? I'm like, no, I can do this. I got time. And I just got it done. So I don't plan to ever do it again, though. That's one of those one and dones. I was like, yeah, I'm pretty much done with this. I don't need to do this again. So.
And I stream occasionally, but I don't. I was trying to stream myself playing Street Fighter V, but I kept losing a lot. So this is one fun for me. It's probably not fun for everybody because I'm not when I'm focused, like losing and laser focused. I'm shutting up and not. That's the whole point of Twitch. People don't really care.
Yeah, that's the whole thing with the Twitch stuff now is that trying to interact while gaming, which some people just clam up or shut down. Not to mention the crazy faces I make playing video games. I don't want other people seeing those, like especially when it's a hard moment or a hard song. My wife makes fun of me. She'll be like, "You ever see your face when you play these things?" I'm like, "Well, no, I don't look in a mirror when I play a game." She's like, "Well, you look ridiculous." I'm just letting you know. I'm like, okay. So if people want it, so obviously, so you said you do some Twitch streaming, but not too much and everything, right? That's pretty much